Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We are so excited to get into this topic of the happiness factor with y'all. My name is Kaylee Hansen. I am the marketing campaigns manager here at GoCo. So any webinars that you see with GoCo or any emails you get come from me. And I'm so excited that you are all here today with Sean, Alex, Fiona, and myself. To get the chat rolling a little bit, we love when the chat is popping off. I am going to ask a little icebreaker question. So I have my cup of coffee right now. What is your go-to morning drink order? Do you like a hot tea? Do you like a latte? What is your preference? So let us know in the chat what your go-to order is. Fiona, what's yours?
I'm partial to chai tea lattes. I'm not a big coffee gal, but a chai tea I can get behind every day.
Oh, I love a good chai tea latte, especially when it's chilly outside, like
Oh
we were
yeah.
talking about before everyone hopped on. I love
It's
it.
a good transition to fall too, right? As it gets chilly.
Sure. For sure. Oh my gosh, I see a water in the chat. Charles, I wish water was my go-to drink order in the morning. What about you, Alex? What's yours?
So mine is, I think, generally speaking, and I think you know this, Kaylee, it's usually an iced coffee of some sort, like an iced latte, but it's been so cold that recently it's been a venti oat milk cappuccino recently. It's been my go-to. It feels like holiday in a cup, you know? So
See, I'm the weirdo who even in Dallas, Texas, when it's 100 degrees outside, I have to have a hot drink. I can't do cold or iced. So I wish I could because that would be so refreshing. But that cappuccino sounds awesome, Alex. What about you, Sean? Which side of the field are you on? Are you
Yeah.
on hot
So
drinks, iced?
I am the opposite to you. I have a baby mouth, so I burn my mouth easily. So cold drinks all the way. Although I just got an AeroPress, so now I'm venturing into the hot coffee, warm beverage territory. So I might be convinced. But yeah, good cold brew, that's all I need. Something with caffeine is my go-to for sure.
I'm with
Yeah,
you. I just need the caffeine. Bring it on. We
exactly.
so many different beverages in the chat. We have hot mochas, protein shake, black coffee, again, water. I wish I could do that. But keep these coming throughout the webinar. Keep the chats rolling in if you have any thoughts or questions for our panelists or anything we are talking about. Throughout the webinar, you can also add questions into the Q&A. It's at the bottom of the Zoom. And we will get to those either if they make sense in the presentation or at the very end. And last but not least, you will get the recording of this webinar afterwards, so sometime either today or tomorrow, and I will be sharing the SHRM and HRCI credits at the end of the webinar as well, both on screen and in the chat. So make sure to stick around so we can hear all of the amazing insight from Sean, Alex, and Fiona. And with that, I want to make some little introductions. So, Alex, do you mind kicking us off and telling us a little bit about yourself?
sure, absolutely. So thank you to everyone, first of all, for spending some time with us today. I'm Alex Seiler. My background is as a chief people officer and a startup advisor. I currently advise 4 startups in the HR tech space, and I've been in people in HR for 20 years, which is scary to say out loud, and primarily focused on fractional clients right now, but also did 2 stints in-house as a CPO as well. So really excited to be here, especially on a topic that I think we are all, if not curious about, already focused on and need to think more about as we move into the future. So just a little bit about me.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex. Really excited to have you here today, especially representing the GoCo side. So appreciate it. Fiona, you want to go next?
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks again for joining us. I am Fiona Dykes. I am the Vice President of People and Culture at Highlight Technologies, and we are a federal contractor. And I've graced my gears, particularly in the federal contracting industry, primarily in the tech space and health and human services. But I have been in with Highlight for just under 10 years and have been with them for the majority of my career, and really excited to be chatting with you all today.
Awesome. Thanks, Fiona. I'm really excited to hear your perspective on all of these topics as well. Sean, you want to go next?
Yeah, so Sean McClay, I'm with Bucket List Rewards. I've been with the company for about 4 years now, and it's been fun where we get to really become that consultant kind of advisor role of helping companies launch and kind of build their recognitions platforms and programs. So I get that fun, unique aspect of what companies are doing, what's working, what we're seeing in the industry as trends. So hopefully we can add some good conversations to the mix today as well.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. And GoCo's so excited to be partnering with Bucket List on this webinar today. So we're excited to hear all of the insights and see what our great panelists have to say. And with that, let's go ahead and kick it off. That's what we're all here for. So I am going to start off with a question that kind of sets the scene a little bit. So why is employee happiness so critical to retention and company culture in today's workplace? And we did some practice sessions before this. And so Alex, I'm going to kick it off to you first to intro this question.
How did I know that? Oh, because I did. It wouldn't be me if I didn't have a bit of a spicy response to this question in particular. So, I am somebody who finds that employee happiness is actually overrated as a retention driver. I think what actually keeps people engaged is meaningful challenge and growth, even when it creates temporary discomfort. So I think companies can obsess over happiness risk and not necessarily create real environments. And can create more friction. So I always say that you should be striving for the majority, not necessarily trying to make everyone happy. Otherwise, you'll make nobody happy. And I think the best cultures aren't necessarily the happiest. They're the ones where people feel stretched, they're trusted with hard problems, and they're given space to fail and learn, really. So I think true satisfaction comes from accomplishment impact, not necessarily ping pong tables and pizza parties. Did I keep the spicy?
I love spicy. I love because I agree. I feel like a lot of the times we're just like, oh yeah, a pizza party. That'll solve all the issues that we're facing. So I love that insight. And we love kicking it off with something a little spicy. What about you, Sean or Fiona? What do you have to say on that?
Yeah, I'll kind of echo that because I think a lot of our companies that we work with are kind of like not looking at the pizza party as like the yes, this is exactly what we want to like cause happiness and see that reaction. But I think it also is just, yeah, making a challenging environment, making sure that you're felt and heard. Alex, I think you're right. Like you can't make everybody happy, but if we're starting to target the ways that we can kind of approach how people are feeling, I think that's a little bit better. I did come across a lovely kind of study that we could probably share in the chat, where surprisingly enough, the biggest kind of movers over the last year were construction, travel, and hospitality, kind of the traditional ones that might not be seen as the happiest kind of workplace cultures. So it feels like that is definitely a focus. We just need to kind of like dial it in as to what does happiness truly mean at the same time.
I'll just piggyback off of that with the nuance behind happiness. I mean, to Alex's point, like what is happiness's place in the work environment? And I think you have to acknowledge that it goes very much beyond the frou-frou positivity hoorah that I think a lot of companies try and put out. But it gets deeper to that psychological safety and the security they have to voice their ideas, make those mistakes, and like Alex had mentioned, that trust within their team structures. So yeah, it's really not about that perpetual joy. You really have to take that holistic approach, especially when you consider the complexities behind generational differences and what those expectations are and how they impact one's feelings and interactions with the workplace.
Awesome. I love that insight. And I know that all of this is easier said than done. So, what is a challenge or a mistake that you've seen organizations make when trying to improve this process? And how can that really, I know that I'm asking how can others avoid it, which is a very big question to ask. But Sean, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely not a one size fits all solution for sure. We can't just have that magical answer of like, do you do this and you're going to find success? But I think one of the things that we see is making assumptions of how you want to kind of structure your recognition programs, how you're interacting with your employees might be the killer of your program too. Like if you're not able to adapt, you're not able to kind of change or listen to feedback, kind of identifying some like key people that might be able to be trusted resources of what kind of is happening as a result of your program. I think that always is a thing to focus on. So yeah, definitely feel free to pivot. You know, the companies that we work with kind of also identify that. Ironically, I was actually having a conversation like this earlier this week with a plumbing company, and they're starting to see that upward momentum, the trends of like the good things. And now they're doubling down on that. There's getting the feedback of they want more rewards to kind of like use their points towards. So we're going to add Amazon and allow them to have a little bit more open abilities to choose what they want to be rewarded with. And I think that's going to take them to that next level. The companies that are kind of structured and like this is the system, the CEO wants it this way, and we can't do it any other way. Those companies are the ones that we kind of see struggle, and that we start to advise them and seeing the data and seeing what happens there as well. So I'd say that's my 15-second answer on that one. Yeah.
I love that. And Fiona, I know that you've been at Highlight for 10 years and you have a lot of experience in the industry. What's your take on this question?
Yeah, to elaborate on what Sean was saying around the rigidity, I think falling into the pitfall of treating employee happiness and recognition, just the overall experience, as a checkbox exercise is really can be really damaging to your culture. So that is things like launching your program without really understanding what matters to your people and having things fall flat because employees weren't necessarily consulted about what they needed. So you'll see this manifest in initiatives through really what it boils down to is superficial engagement tactics. So things that feel generic or performative, a disconnected leadership team where there's no accountability or any access again to that ground level insight from your employees. And then those measurement failures, right? So where employee feedback is ignored, not captured at all, or the focus is on measuring the wrong metric. So I would imagine this can be a fairly common trap that people can fall into, but it also shouldn't be the end of the world if you do. I think there's always opportunity to acknowledge where a misstep has occurred and begin to engage your team from there. So I think the lesson there is really just to always start with listening and co-creating those solutions with your people, and making sure that you're dynamic as a result.
I love that. Alex, do you have anything that you wanted to add?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I just plus one to everything that both Sean and Fiona said. And the co-creation piece stands out for me as well. I think, you know, what I've seen as the biggest mistake when looking at sort of how you treat happiness programs is that they can become a substitute for actually core problems or core issues like compensation, career growth, meaningful work. So I think companies often, I feel like the natural inclination or default is to use to come up with superficial perks while ignoring underlying fundamental problems like burnout, lack of career progression paths, you know, even toxic leadership. So I think that can be a real danger. And I think trying methods where you can gain actionable insights, this is where I think the co-creation could come in, while building engagement through participation. So what are some things that you could do to actually engage people to get to that end result? So I'm a big believer in fix structural issues first. It's building blocks, because, you know, these surface level initiatives will only work and complement things when you have those solid fundamentals.
I love that. This is so good so far. And I just shared all of y'all's LinkedIn information in the chat as well. So if you have any questions, anyone on this webinar, any questions post-webinar, or want to just connect and learn a little bit more from our speakers, you can connect with them there. So thank y'all for that. As these workplace expectations evolve, I mean, it's no secret that even in the past couple of years, workplace is drastically different than what it was before. What strategies can HR leaders, but also admins who may be doing HR tasks or just leadership in general. What strategies can they do to ensure that their retention programs remain relevant and remain effective? Fiona, can you start on this one?
Yeah, sure. And I hate to sound like a broken record, but it just boils down to staying adaptable, and making sure that you are pulsing your people. What worked 3 years ago might not work today. What worked yesterday might not work today. So we're constantly pulse checking through regular feedback sessions, whether that's one-on-one with your manager, as part of our all hands open forum-esque type of activity, and adjusting our approach as that feedback comes to us. I think ultimately the goal isn't just to react to the workplace, and how it's evolving, but to anticipate, shape, and design those experiences proactively for employees to create that mutual value for them and for the organizations that we're all supporting. And so I know that sounds a lot like, oh, you need to be a wizard mind reader, but you really don't need a crystal ball. I think the most sophisticated proactive tool that you can lean on is already sitting right in front of you, and it's the form of your people, right? They're already telling you exactly what you need. It's just about if you're willing to listen.
I love that, Alex. Do you have anything you want? Or Sean, I saw
Yeah.
you went off mute. Is there anything you wanted to add?
Oh, I'll let Alex answer first.
So again, Fiona's word adaptability is one that I was going to maybe harp on a little bit about. I use the term adaptability and flexibility and choice a lot, and I think it feeds into this here. I think the focus needs to be flexibility versus chasing trends. I think you want to build systems that anticipate change is the other thing I would say, not react to it. Like, I think if anything we've learned, particularly in the HR space over the last few years, is things move quickly and evolve very quickly. So we need to build systems that allow for that, and get very comfortable launching what I call micro experiments across different teams where you can rapidly test new retention ideas as well. I think the teams and the future of HR belongs to teams that sort of build systems for change, not rigid solutions, right? Because you want that to become a dynamic part of your workforce. And if you can also build them into the process, not necessarily be decision makers, but like they feel like they're part of it, that can go a long way from a retention standpoint too.
Yeah, I think everything's kind of been said already. Adaptability seems to really be the key of today's conversation. But I think it is one of those things. The newer generations, newer kind of demographics, it's going to start to kind of like change how you want to approach things. You don't want to kind of say it worked 40 years ago, it's going to work today. So hopefully everybody on the call today doesn't have that mindset, but that is one of those things is every generation is going to value how they get challenged differently, how they get respected differently, get heard differently. So I think it's that just making sure that you're able to kind of open up those channels and allow for those open conversations. Because I don't know about you, but I've had a boss that was really horrible and really toxic, and when you can't talk to your boss. So making sure that you have that clear in communication is a key for me as well.
I love that. And on the same path of just clear communication, expectations, things like that, I know that Bucket List offers just a whole new world of automation and just employee appreciation. Sean, how do you envision like that intersection of automation with personalization, with that connection, to really just transform the employee experience, whether it is Bucket List or just in general?
There we go. Yeah. How do we sell a bucket list? No, just kidding. I think it really is one of those fun challenges that we have is trying to find where you can automate some of the processes, but also some of those processes you still want to make and feel human. So making the daily grind of like making sure your budgets are all set so that you know how much you're spending, that's all automated. Giving the people access to awards or ability to recognize, automated as well. But making sure that maybe a manager who's coming into the role for the first time has those tools might be a mixture of automation where you're providing them that tool set, but you don't want to give them a chat GPT replacement of what they're going to do as a recognition, because I feel like humans are starting to get pretty good at recognizing when chat GPT is getting involved in a conversation, and that just becomes a detractor. You know that that wasn't authentic, that didn't feel heartfelt. Your manager didn't write you a lovely paragraph of awesomeness. That was truly just a robot that gave that to you. So I think there is that balance, is automate all the data processing, use it to get as much metrics as you can out of it. But then there's still that human element of like, what do those metrics mean? What are the teams telling us? And finding, the story amongst all the noise of data that you get provided. So I think that's kind of where we're kind of starting to see the industry and the trend, especially our side, is how do we introduce the AI side, but also not replace the human side of the program. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah.
I was muted, of course. But I agree totally. And Sarah, I see your comment in the chat that you love the insight about AI generated recognition. We are going to talk all sorts about AI here in a little bit because it's a topic that is I guess a little hot right now. A couple people are thinking about it. But Alex, Fiona, what do y'all think when it comes to automation, personalization, connection? I mean, Alex, I know that you work with so many different companies on so many different things. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think for me, the big thing is, as you sort of introduce, whether it's AI or other forms of automation, is to not lose sight of the fact that, automation and personalization won't be replacing human connection. It's just kind of augmenting it, essentially. And so we are going to need both. We're just going to need to use them in different ways. And I think that the key will be, to using technology that really creates space for those genuine human moments, and maybe those moments that we don't get to do as much right now, or have as much, rather, I should say, because of all of the transactional pieces that we're dealing with. So I think the winners at the end of the day will be the organizations that find that balance between automating things that are transactional so you can elevate things that need to be transformational.
That I want to write that down and
Yeah.
all over everything.
He's been sitting on that for like 3 weeks, and he's like, all right, now's my time.
I probably was, not gonna lie.
Amazing. I don't know how to follow that up. But yeah, no, I agree with all of the above. I think your tech stack should create bridges and not barriers. If it's making people feel more isolated or siloed, it's failing what its fundamental purpose is, especially in those hybrid or remote first work environments. You want to make it easy to connect, not harder. And I came up with this a little bit ago while I was sitting here prepping. And I was saying earlier, it snowed where I am. I'm in the DC area. And I think technology is kind of like salt on our roads, right? And like I said, it snowed and stayed very cold. So this feels like a very apt metaphor for me. So too little salt, everyone's crashing out. The roads are awful. You're stuck in your house. You can't get anywhere. Just enough salt, you're helping make those roads navigable, you're easing those commutes, and just the general transportation is easier. And then too much salt, it's corrosive on the roads, it's bad for the environment, hurts my dog's paws, no good. So your goal with your tech stack and what you're implementing is to find that sweet spot, right? That clears the path for connection without damaging any of the existing technologies or the ecosystem that you have in place.
I love that so much, especially since GoGo is an HRIS. We do work and integrate with different partners just to make the perfect tech stack for what people need. But there's a lot that can go right and a lot that can go wrong. So how can HR leaders avoid that tech fatigue when introducing these new tools to ensure that like all the tools are adding value to the employee experience instead of just being one additional login that the employees have to keep track of?
I love single sign-on. Okay, I am a big proponent of single sign-on, so I'll start there. But no, in all seriousness, I think both employees and us as the executors of whatever these platforms are, both parties can become exhausted and disengaged if there's just too much going on, I think. And going back to what I'd said earlier about the happiness factor, I think your people are also going to respond differently based on their generational differences and how they interact with technology or have interacted with technology over the course of their lifetime. So you'll have older generations that are skeptical from the start, perhaps. I think they may prefer the human interaction and are going to seek out that training and support and value that a lot more. Then as you move into Gen X and millennials and beyond, I think you'll find that they may be more adaptive. But they'll definitely want to prioritize things like efficiencies and expect kind of that seamless digital experience. So ultimately, it's not going to be about how many tools that you have to support, but how seamlessly that's going to integrate into people's work lives and how your existing environment is going to respond. So I'd say just before introducing anything new, just ask yourselves if this is making employees' lives easier and how that's impacting the overall user experience.
I love that, Alex. I know that you had some thoughts on this topic whenever we were practicing. What do you have to say?
Was it the tech fatigue that I focused in on? Was that what it was?
You had some thoughts on it, yes.
Yeah, I mean, I think that as HR practitioners today, we deal with so much fatigue. And that can be felt by our employees, whether it's tech fatigue, if you're a remote first company in particular, whether it's, survey fatigue, whatever it may be. So my question always I ask before anything else is, what are we trying to solve for, right? Because I think when something new gets introduced, you take this sort of shiny new penny approach sometimes, and what works for some companies won't necessarily work for another. So my recommendation always is start with a clear tech strategy that really maps each tool to a specific pain point. So you really need to know what your pain points are in order to do that. And again, that goes back to what are you trying to solve for? One thing that I haven't personally done, but I've heard of somebody else that I know has done in their company, is creating what they call digital champions, which is a network of early adopters who can provide an organic adoption for any new technology that you might be using. So that makes those things become quicker wins as well. And then I also say, as an HR team and for employees, you also, particularly if you're at a remote first company, you want one-stop shopping. You want as many things in one system as possible, because again, you want to make your life as easy as possible. And so I think where tech fatigue can also fit in is if you've got so many point solutions, because that just becomes tiresome. That focus on consolidation, simplification, and integration is also really critical.
We love simple.
Yeah.
Is key, just as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
HR professionals and just admins, leadership, they already have so much going on that it needs to be simple for them and for the employees too, just for everyone involved. So I love that. Sean, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to say there's two sides to that story, and I'm going to lean in on Alex's digital champion side of things, because you really want, like, if you are introducing a new tool, you want to hit the ground running in a good start. Any kind of like bumbles or missteps, the employee might just kind of fall off on that. So really making sure like the reason why we're introducing this tool is clear, what the advantages are. As Alex was saying, is it would be lovely if one tool can do it all, but then at the same time, you might have that one tool that does something a little bit, but doesn't do it enough, and then creates that friction and kind of that fall off there as well. So usually, yeah, we definitely see a great success when there's like digital champions involved, kind of being the cheerleaders of a launch of an application, being able to channel any feedback back to the main admins right away. And then just making sure that there's like clear resources. So if you're in a startup, you probably are used to having 19 different tools that you have to access on a day-to-day. But if you're my brother who works on heavy duty machinery, that's often mine sites, who barely uses a computer and probably does not know what a webinar is, so I can kind of skewer him right now. He needs to have that quick resource, like have it on his phone, have it as an app on his phone, and just a one-click solution for that type of thing. So I think it's really identifying what your employees are like, how they utilize the technology, and then making it easier for them as well. So yeah, I promised to skewer my brother at one point, and that's the point right now. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. And I'm actually going to throw a little bit of a curveball and ask a question that we didn't practice, just because I'm so interested to hear your thoughts on it. But what about leadership? I know that you know, we can offer so many thoughts and ideas and goals and platforms, but we ultimately have to get that leadership buy-in. And I know that that can be a topic and a webinar all on its own, probably multiple, a series. But what are your thoughts or your suggestions, or maybe even your like practical solutions for getting leadership buy-in and involvement and just getting them excited about these initiatives too?
I saw Fiona and I both go off mute, but I'm going to let her go first.
I strategically kept myself muted.
I'm excited for this.
Oh boy. Okay, yeah. So my main, I guess, point of advice here is to speak their language, right? Your CFO, your COO, your CEO, they're all going to have different priorities. And depending on who your audience is or what their focus is, you want to tailor your proposal, let's call it that, your proposal to what they're interested in. So your CFO is going to be very financially driven, right? Your COO may be more procedural, or how does this impact our operations? And your CEO is going to be thinking bigger picture. How does this impact our employees? How does this impact the company as a whole, right? And so speaking their language and tailoring what you're presenting to them so that they understand it in their own world is going to be super helpful. Alex, thoughts?
Thoughts? Well, doubling down on some that you said, I think you say proposal, I say business case, but potato,
Sure.
potato. So I think you have to build the business case, right? Because the more straightforward your business case is and simple, and going back to what Fiona said about speaking their language, like they don't want HR jargon. I've always said, like, I'm a business leader that specializes in people. So and I'm the connective tissue, but people don't want HR or corporate jargon. Just cut through the noise and tell them what they need to know. And you're going to really help yourself in the long run get things signed off on quicker, right? If you have, no surprise, these days we should all be data driven, not anecdotally driven. So having some data that's going to support what's the ROI for the business, right? It's going to help you in the long run. And the thing that I've always done, particularly as a CPO, is socialize ideas early behind the scenes. Before you're even going to put that business case out there, start dropping little seeds, with members of the leadership team, so that by the time they're like, oh yeah, Alex has been talking about this, we're sick of hearing about it, so let's just do it, So that's kind of my take on it.
Now I'm just picturing you just like every other day, just dropping like a hint here, and then like, okay.
I know. It's not even subtle by the end of this week.
I'll use a little bit of a metaphor from my old film production days. Yeah, definitely try to figure out what your elevator pitch is. Like, what's the 2-sentence summary of what you're trying to achieve and what that is for each of those levels. So if you're pitching it to the CEO, your pitch is going to be different than maybe a frontline leader of what the benefits of the program or the ideas you're working on. But yeah, I think like this topic definitely got covered by Alex and Fiona, but I think it really is, yeah, figuring out what is their motivation as to why you want to introduce a program like this or what you want to change.
I love all of that. Thank you for letting me go through my little question rabbit hole or bunny trail and asking that. So I appreciate it. We're gonna go back on the trail of recognition programs in general, a little away from HR technology in general. But Alex, what frameworks or principles? I know that you help people build things all the time and programs. So what frameworks or principles guide the design of scalable yet meaningful recognition programs? Like the key being that scalable yet meaningful. Oh, I think you're on mute, Alex.
I am. Well, I was. So I think for me, it really comes down to a couple core principles, really. So I think the first one really is sort of standardization versus personalization. Then the other one is scale versus authenticity. And then the last one would be immediacy versus significance, right? So you want, again, I don't want to be a broken record, but this goes back to having clear criteria from the get-go in order to make sure that you're allowing for the right customization when it comes to things like personalization. I also think that the ability to think about potentially tiered recognition levels, is something to think about. And then also a big thing I also find, or I've noticed, is that companies have got used to automating recognition processes, but we don't want to automate the sentiment, right? So, it's easy to now send out these emails and things like that, but people know that those could be AI generated or they could come somewhere else. So you really need to find a way to still create that human connection and sentiment with it. And also using data again, or analytics, to make sure you fully understand what the gaps are and the impact as far as what you're doing from a recognition process as well.
I love that, Sean. I know that you're probably really excited to talk about this.
Bread and butter. No, yeah. I mean, Alex, do you want to come work with Bucket List? No, just kidding. I think it's
let's talk, Sean. Let's talk.
I think a lot of good key points there. Yeah, definitely the immediacy, like making sure that you're not sitting on a recognition is a big thing. You want to have that recognition real time. But again, Alex was saying a great point of like, if you're having those yearly anniversaries, make sure it's landing on the day, but not relying on just the platform to kind of like broadcast that message. If you're the leader, reach out to that person, give them the congratulations on being here for 5 years, and kind of finding that good kind of human versus robot interaction. Again, there's probably another theme that we'll start talking about more and more. But then again, just making sure that you've got that feedback loop. So scaling back to the last question, when you're building your program, get that feedback loop going and then keep listening to that feedback loop so that you're able to adapt as well. The best programs that we see definitely have that budget, but also have the messaging that is not always about the points that you're giving out. It's about that recognition. Being at Bucket List for 4 years, and of course, using our own platform, every time I get a recognition, I still get that good feeling, but I don't really think about the points that I received there. It's less about that. It's more about, oh, cool, like I've helped Rebecca out on this, or I've helped, somebody else on a topic. And that's that good feeling that I get out of the recognition system. So I think there's that balance. You can obviously kind of advise on, what your budget could be, how to best utilize it, what manager level should get what points to do, or what kind of awards, and make it really kind of feel kind of like very customized and automated from an HR leader standpoint. But it is that balance of just making sure that people are being heard and felt at the same time. Yeah.
I love it. Fiona, anything to add?
Yeah, I think the only thing I'll add, and maybe foot stomp if someone else did already cover this, is the importance of tying it to your larger mission of the company and the values that you promote at the company. I know that's something that we've found a lot of success with at Bucket List as well. So all of our kudos, recognition, anything that goes in the platform has to be tied to one of our corporate values, and it really prompts the employees to think about what the bigger picture impact is, but also helps them recognize that even just the smallest things can have that cascading effect and have a positive impact on the organization as a whole. And lastly, also just keeps our values top of mind for folks, right? And keeps them in the sphere of recognition. So
yeah, and not to kind of talk about our features or anything, but even like the ability to kind of hover over the core value to feel like understand what exactly it's about. You might have some employees see the corporate values on the wall, but not really truly mean why they're actually your core values.
Yeah.
So I think that's another great point.
And that's one of my biggest pet peeves, when core values just live on a wall, but they don't exist in any sort of conversation other than that, right? So as much as you can link that into the fabric of all of your conversations and make sure it's trickling down, that's where they'll actually become meaningful, and also where you'll have values alignment within your organization too.
That's really interesting. I've thought about, aligning it to organizations' values, but just not having it live on a wall and it being represented through your recognition and through what you're giving back to your employees. I love that. Speaking of employees, I'm going to go on to a question that we have in the Q&A because I feel like it kind of goes with this conversation. So it says, our organization has to balance recognition across international regions. Let me see. I don't want to read all of it if I don't have to. A lot of different microcultures, frontline customer facing roles, as well as people who are in an office or remote. Is there any sweeping generalizations for equitable recognition between folks that are with and without their devices during the workday? So are there, I know that Sean, you were talking about how your brother works in construction, so he probably has people at his company that are in the office typing away all day, but then also people on the field. So what are your thoughts when it comes to those workplaces that are a little atypical in the way that they do things? Sean, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, sounds like I probably could. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, I think really it does, if you can make your program feel adaptable, like there's again, not that one solution fits all. So when we have those multinational companies, all across the world, each region is going to have their own ways of recognizing their own values and kind of appreciate how to be recognized, and making sure that you have room in your program to really allow that local team to decide what is a recognition and what does that mean to that team. And then again, generational boundaries, same thing. The newer generation will want those thanks. My brother, even though he's younger than me, acts like an old man. As long as he has a job, he's happy. So kind of tailoring it towards that. And then when we work with manufacturing companies, it's really kind of like, how do you showcase those recognitions in different ways? Making it easy for the managers to give out the recognition, but maybe having TVs in the break room that show like a constant feed of those recognitions coming through, or even bringing them up in like team meetings or your start of day safety meetings where you can have that open availability to like still shout out Joe for doing something in person and reflect that back into any platforms or recognition programs you have. I think sometimes you kind of want to just focus on what will work everywhere, and that can kind of lead to that friction that an employee just doesn't see the value that they will receive from it, and then immediately shut off and never think about it again. So that's my initial thoughts. Yeah.
Alex, Fiona, which one wants to go first?
So I would say, I think that, Sean hit on a good point that, I mean, first of all, the person that submitted this question, you have a lot to consider here. So that's the first thing I'd say. But I'd say the key principle, because you're dealing with so many different types of workers who are both connected and not connected, right, to devices, is make sure you recognize through their existing work patterns, not creating new ones, right? Because you don't want to create more work for yourself or anything new. Plus, you should go with what they are used to as well. So I'd say if you're not connected to devices, for example, you could think about physical like recognition boards in a break area if you have a break area, or peer nomination cards, or team huddle spotlights. I mean, things that could be very much still in the moment that highlight that. And then I think for connected workers, it's a little bit more straightforward because it's some of the stuff that we've talked about. And it's ready like a digital recognition platform, which is really commonplace. Social feed celebrations, things like you doing that on Slack, whatever you use as a company as well. And then, cross team visibility, right? As far as what's happening as well, and then the other one, going back to the device one, like I've done like MVP programs for the month, most valuable. Like I think there's different ways, but you have to think about the different segments of your workforce. And again, go with their work pattern. Don't try and change it, is what I would say.
Yeah, I think Sean and Alex kind of covered it all, but what it can boil down to is meet them where they are, right? Yeah. Don't try to change what they're used to. And yeah, I think something that we try to stress to our teams is how easy it is to customize awards or other types of platforms within our existing ecosystem, right? But how easy it is to help engage their folks in a way that is familiar and impactful to their specific teams. If what we've built out is not working, tell us, and we can help build something out that is work. It's going to work better for your team. So for example, we have folks, we're not international, but in government contracting, our folks are at agency sites all day long, not necessarily connected to Highlight day in and day out. And so when they are connected to Highlight, they have very specific areas where they're going to check. They're going to check their email, and they're going to check Teams. And that's about the extent of what they're going to check. They're going to check to see what are the important things I've missed out in the past couple of days since I've been back. And so we have, for example, a running recognition feed on Teams where they can just scroll and catch up, not necessarily even have to be logged into a recognition platform. It's just, again, meeting them where they're at, letting them have the opportunity and that flexibility to scroll through. And then also highlighting things in emails, like in our newsletter, or special shout outs to specific teams that brings recognition to them, right? So
yeah. I love how Fiona said it so much more eloquently than I did. So and I normally say meet them where they're at as well. So I'm glad you said that. The one thing I would just add after listening to Fiona is also, you don't need to figure this out in a vacuum. I think sometimes certain HR teams would be like, trying to become mind readers and guess what people want as far as recognition. And that is the biggest mistake you can make. So make sure that you do conduct, as cheesy as it may sound in some regard, focus groups or interest surveys, so that you're not drawing from nothing. The data is going to help you, because otherwise you're building with no intel. So that's the other thing I would also say.
And then you end up with those champions that you can utilize after you've done that program as well. So like, it's really, echo that. It's really key to exactly know what you're kind of wanting to get out of your targets as well. Yeah.
Perfect. Man, what a good discussion. I'm sad we only have like 14 minutes left. But I want to move on to, say you have your recognition programs and everyone's getting excited about it and you're almost there. How do you coach leaders and managers to really embed that into their leadership style, to like feel that passion for it as much as you do? Fiona, can you start on that one?
yeah, and I think I touched on this a little bit and how we answered that last question, and meeting them where they're at. But there's also success in making it very personal. And I know Alex had touched on this earlier as well. You want to help them understand how the positive impact of having a strong culture and what that can mean to their team's success. And I think this also goes back to the conversation around how to bring in your executive leaders and get their buy-in. How do you get your frontline managers buy-in? Is by helping them understand what this will do to the productivity on their teams, the outputs that their team is helping support with their customer, things like that. And so one of the ways we do this, we celebrate our leaders who excel at what we're expecting them to do. So I'd say nothing drives adoption and engagement on our recognition platform more than seeing their peers and their other colleagues find success in recognition, and then also be rewarded for it, right? So bucket list is obviously something that we've incorporated into our recognition strategy. And one of the, I guess, lessons learned that we've learned as we've adopted the platform, and this goes back to the meeting them where they're at, is how people like to be recognized, right? So I think a lot of the platform promotes that public kudos and those awards, and a large swath of our population has absolutely no issue with this whatsoever. They're all about it, yeehaw. But as we got a few months into the platform, we noticed a group of folks that had positive feedback overall about the platform and its use cases, but they weren't necessarily super active. And so as we dug into it, and again, this goes back to listening to your people, we recognized that they preferred more of that quiet acknowledgement, right? And more of the project related recognition. And so the fix for that was, well, we went back to basics, actually, again, talking to them about what recognition meant to them, any other recognition strategies we can employ on their specific project, that would be meaningful to them, and then pointing out the private recognition capabilities on bucket lists to get them up and running. And so that basically did the trick there. But yeah, it's just going to be helping make it personal to find success within your groups.
Man, I think you just dropped many bombs in that.
I know I did go a little bit
No, I love it.
in a few different areas, but I think y'all get the gist.
I love it. Alex, Sean, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I don't have too much, but my natural reaction to that question is a spicy response, which is make it a KPI that impacts their performance. Bonus payout. But aside from that, all jokes aside, I think there could be a KPI that lives, a recognition KPI that could live within a leadership team's metrics, right? So that they're holding themselves accountable for that as well. I also think that like training leaders that recognition, just like feedback, happens real time, and it shouldn't feel like a scheduled task. It should be like a reflex. When you see something, it's when you see something good happening, say something, right? And because recognition comes in so many different forms, and I just think some leaders are just not naturally wired that way. So helping them understand what that looks like can also go a long way.
Yeah, I mean, you joke about the KPI, but we have a few fast food franchises that they recognize that their leaders are so busy that if unless it's a KPI, they kind of like almost push that off. But I think it really, yeah, does kind of boil down to kind of showcasing to the leader either as a tool that they could use if they're not comfortable with recognition, giving them the tool set that they could just still recognize their team, but not think, is this a good enough recognition? But also just getting the buy-in at different levels. You know, we have some CEOs that will just go into the recognition systems, kind of add points, kind of add comments, and that's as valuable as a direct recognition from the CEO themselves. I think there's different approaches that will work with different leadership styles. I think it's just more kind of what Fiona and their team went through is what will work. Okay, this didn't work. How do we adapt? How do we go through that? Rodrigo on our team works with a highlight all the time of like figuring out what that actually truly means. And I think at the end of the day, again, not one size fits all, show the value. Getting the leadership buy-in is the first key, and then embracing what ideas they come up with as well. Because they'll come up with, oh, now I can give out an award for my top salesperson of the quarter. Let's get that award into the system. And I'll talk to it as like the bucket list style, but that could easily be replicated in a physical real world style as well. It's just more getting them on board, then kind of showcases it to the employees, and then it kind of trickles on from there.
And I would just add modeling the right behaviors as well. That needs to start at the top because your middle managers are watching what you're doing, and they could be picking up either good habits or bad habits, depending on how you operate in the space as well.
Definitely.
Well, I am so sad we're coming up on time. So I am going to end us on one final question. What is one piece of advice or like little nugget that you would like to give senior HR leaders or admins or anyone implementing these programs about balancing all of these topics we talked about, technology, happiness, connection, things like that in the future of their work? And I'm going to start with you, Alex, on this one. What's your final little sprinkle?
Make it spicy.
I had a feeling you were going to make it spicy, no pressure. I mean, I may have said it earlier. One thing is definitely how a key one, if it didn't come across, is how technology should really amplify human connection, not replace it. I also think that we've got to remember that the most impactful moments in somebody's career come from human conversations, not algorithms. And I think people will still be looking for that in the future. The other thing I would say is like, because we're talking about automation and personalization and HR technology, is making sure your tech stack actually enables deeper relationships rather than just feels like another transaction that you're working through. So sorry I wasn't spicy enough, but those are the things that came to mind.
Should have had a spiciness poll to see, if you needed to go spicy or not. Yeah.
Hey, I mean, Sarah in the chats and the
Spicy takes with Alex.
talk.
Oh, they get real. Yeah, might be called HR after dark.
I'm upset. I love it. Fiona, what about you? What's your one piece of advice or a little nugget?
I think for me, it would be to not overthink it. I think that a lot of people get caught up between how to blend technology and the human connection. And I think in one of our run through, I had mentioned the Venn diagram meme where the two circles, or it's not a circle, or it could be a circle. It depends, right? It depends on what your organization needs. But both things can be true and exist at the same exact time. And I think most of the successful organizations that are using tech are going to use those to, again, amplify those relationships, not replace them. I know Sean and Alex we've all kind of jumped around that topic as well. So I'd say start with the human experience that you want to create, and then find a tech that supports that vision.
Perfect. And Sean, last but not least.
If anything, all three of us are aligned on everything that we've been saying, which is awesome. It sucks to be the last person to go, because then you don't get the spicy takes. Alex steals them all. But I think, yeah, it really does boil down to keep that human connection there. Technology is great. Technology can help you leverage, the automation, the data side of things, but making sure that there's still that human element in there. We're, as humans, really good at kind of detecting when something's more automated and not authentic. And if you can kind of have that goal, and then I'll steal Fiona's keep it simple. I think there's a lot of times that you can overthink of a program, get a super complicated design, and then you release that to the crowd and nobody picks it up. Kind of went through that today with a spreadsheet, and I was like, here's my spreadsheet. Isn't this data awesome? And then the other person's like, I don't even know what you're looking at here. So I kind of relate that back to like rewards and recognition programs. You just want to make it easy for the employees to understand, easy for the leaders to leverage with their tool sets. And I think that's a key that we can take away today.
Oh, amazing. I loved all of this. Thank you all so much. To the chat and attendees, I am about to share the Sherman HRCI codes, but I do want to chat a little bit about GoCo and bucket list. So, Sean, do you mind giving just a little brief update or introduction to bucket list? I know we talked about it a little bit during the webinar, but
So you may have heard of a program called Bucket List and may have heard from one of our clients, but we are a rewards and recognition platform. We're designed to really help retain top talent, try to figure out where you can kind of improve and kind of create your culture for employees to feel valued and motivated. And then our team always loves the day-to-day conversations of like how to get you to those next levels. So we're definitely passionate about this topic. It's been a unique ride over the last 4 years to see our team just really kind of grow that culture internally, and all the successful stories that we've had working with various companies throughout the world. So yeah, we've been having fun building thriving, engaging cultures.
I love it. Thank you so much. And we at GoCo love partnering with Bucket List on sessions. About GoCo a little bit, like we've said many times before, y'all are busy. Y'all have a lot going on. So GoCo is an all-in-one HRIS that really works to automate your manual tasks so that you can spend more time focusing on building those happier, healthier, more productive teams. And I can't talk about GoCo without talking about our great client success team. Each client of GoCo gets a dedicated client success manager so that we can help you through your journey here at GoCo and just in HR in general. So I just launched a poll if you'd like to chat a little bit more with GoCo or Bucket List or both of us, because we love chatting. Please respond appropriately. And with that, unfortunately, we must part, but I am just so grateful for everyone who participated in this webinar today, who took an hour out of their day to listen to all of us chat and hear all this insight. And then Sean, Alex, and Fiona, it has been the biggest pleasure to get to do this with y'all today and also learn. It's always interesting from an employee side to hear about all of this and all of the thoughts and opinions. So thank you all for that. You have so much love in the chat as well. I agree, Tiffany. These webinars always go by way too fast, but I'm excited for our next sessions in the future, and hopefully we can do one all together again. And with that, thank you all so much for joining us today. Thank you, Fiona, Sean, and Alex as well. Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Bye.